we were useless without those people around us, especially the women. The women were the backbone of that struggle. And I always seen them, John, as the unsung heroes and heroines. You know, the ones that got their houses wrecked.
You just reminded me of the title of Tom Barry's book, of course, Guerrilla Days in Ireland. Obviously the term guerrilla, like a guerrilla army, refers to like an unofficial army. It's not an official government one. One advantage worldwide that guerrilla armies hold over the official army that they're fighting against is that they know the terrain and the area a lot better. They have the support of the public people, like in Tom Barry's days, you'd have civilians hiding men in their houses or giving information or helping any way they can. And can you talk to me a bit about like the public support that you would receive and how these small ways that people would help you out, even if they weren't members themselves, you know?
Well, we relied, to be honest, totally on the host population. You know, as Matsai Tung said, you know, a fish swimming in the water being the population, the host population, the fish being the guerrilla, and you take the fish out of the water, you've lost that war. And so it was very much similar to my recollection. People did open their doors, and people, you needed those. You know, there was this image of the volunteer with the rifle at the corner, but from an IRA propaganda point of view, there's a poster out there years ago, and that sums that up. You had the volunteer with the rifle, but behind him, you had the woman who held the weapon. You had the person who was collecting money to buy the weapon, and you had a whole line of people behind that volunteer. So that volunteer, that guerrilla fighter at that corner of a street or at a hedgerow firing at a British Army patrol, that was he was at the point of it, but you had people single file behind him and in different roles supporting him, you know, for him being at that corner or at that hedgerow. People supporting him, the Americans, giving us financial support to buy the weaponry coming in, the intelligence for the volunteer, the woman who provided the house where the weapon was kept, the run back, the other woman who allowed after the shoot to bring you in, to take the clothes off you, to put in the washing machine, to make sure the clothes were all clean. We had that. We had a lot of support. But were we in a minority? Yes. We were in a minority, but we were in a substantial minority. We had enough to keep that war going, enough people to support us, to keep the campaign going at that time. I'm talking about 75, 76, 77, into 78, into 79, that whole period. So yeah, there was definitely people supporting us. I would have been one of the guys that would have been trying to get houses, safe houses. So I would have been, you know, given a note to say, try that one. She was at the club the other night singing Republican songs. So you would have went to her and he says, rap the door, can I come in? Who are you? Can I come in? Yeah, come on in. So you would explain, could we use the house? Some of them would have said, yes, you can use the house for meetings, but you can't bring guns into the house. Others said you can bring guns into the house, but put them in the coal shed. Don't bring them in the actual house. Others were dead on. They were sound about bringing weaponry in, and others weren't. So you were given different shades of support, and people were definitely supporting you. We were useless without those people around us, especially the women. The women were the backbone of that struggle, both within the prison and outside of the prison. It was the women, because they ran the house. It wasn't really up to the man. If you went to the door and they asked the man, he says, "I'll have to see the wife about that." So, you know, you would have went to the door and said, "Are you married?" Why? What's that got to do with anything? Because if you're married, then I want to talk to your wife. And it's usually the women would be who were running the house. They were the ones that would say, "Yep, yeah or nay."
I'd be right in saying that they'd be taking a huge risk by even leaving a gun or explosives being stored in their house, because I've heard that if there was any hint that a civilian was doing that, the RUC would come in and rip up every floorboard and tear every wall in the house apart.
Yeah, and I always seen them, John, as the unsung heroes and heroines. You know, the ones that got their houses wrecked. You know, some people think in our you know, as history's unfolding, you know, like they were known as terrorists then. Tom Barry, 1919, 1921. But I study history. I study military history. I've been studying history since I was 19, 17. So even then, they were known as terrorists and gunmen and thugs. But as history's unfolded, you know, and they got into power, Fianna Fáil, especially Fianna Fáil, not so much Fine Gael, but Fianna Fáil in the south, they revere them men, the men of 1916, the men of 1919 to 21. We're now, you know, sort of getting a certain amount of legitimacy now. Well, you're actually offering, you're interested in listening to me, but back then we were known as thugs, gangsters, gunmen, men of violence, scumbags. That's what we were regarded as. That I lived that. You know, I came in one night and the television was on and my mum was staring at me and she was like a face like thunder. And I says, "What happened? What's the matter? I'm just in from work. I mean, is the tea ready? What? Tea? I'll tell you, you're nothing but you're. Go ahead, mum. Oh, go ahead. You're thug. You get shoot. Men of violence. Here's me. I can't believe you, mum. I actually can't believe you. You're watching that propaganda on that TV, and that's what happened. It was constant propaganda where they were calling us thugs, mafia, gangsters, gunmen. Oh my God, it just went on and on and on, you know. And then of course with the peace people, they came in 1976. These were all these women, usually middle class, and who called on these men of violence, people like me, lay down your arms, stop it, stop the killing. And it was all geared not at the British state or the British army. It was people like me, lay down your arms, stop doing this, stop doing this. And some of them actually picketed my house. You know, so it wasn't plain sailing. You had the British Army to deal with, you had the RUC, you had informers, touts, but you'd also got sometimes your own people, you know, people in your own area who were against you. So this attitude where, you know, like the French resistance. Churchill said that de Gaulle, you know, we're going to, what, 1945, we're going to rewrite this. But he says this French resistance is a minority. It's not the majority. Yous were collaborating. The vast majority of the French people were collaborating. But Churchill said to Charles de Gaulle, we're going to rewrite this. It's called revisionism. And he says, we're going to have Vive la Resistance, Vive la France. And we're going to, but he says, the reality is, yous were involved in a lot of, French were involved in a lot of collaboration with the Germans. And that's true. But out of that, they color coded it. And by the 70s, it was the great French resistance and how the French people, you know, fought against the Nazi occupation, which was erroneous. It wasn't true. Likewise, this thing, you know, looking back, I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, we always supported you," and I went, "No, you didn't. They didn't. They didn't." But as history has unfolded, and you know, things are changing now. Demographics have changing. You're getting closer and closer and closer to the possibility of a united Ireland. And then out of that, people's attitudes would be, well, I always supported the IRA. No, you didn't.